Hi, everyone. Welcome to Otakusphere, not weekly, but getting there, episode 29, I think it is. That sounds good. I am Karen, and with me tonight are Lifesong,
Hello.
LB,
Hello.
and that's it because Sal couldn't make it this week, which is a shame because I want to hear what he has to say about Gridmen, but we'll have to wait for next week for that. Or maybe the following week, where it's kind of up in the air, but we'll see. Okay, we're not going to do an opening what has everybody been doing segment just because we have so much anime that premiered this week that we need to talk about. So let's just jump right into it with Sword Art Online Season 3, Episode 1. I should start out by saying that my husband spoiled me on a little bit of what was going to happen in this episode, so I wouldn't be too upset by it. So I knew that Kirito was going to get stabbed. I just didn't know when, and I didn't know the details. So watching this episode was kind of like a horror movie for me because I kept like waiting for Kirito to get stabbed. Like even in the fantasy world, I was waiting for him to get stabbed. So when it finally happened, it was like, oh, what a relief! That's over with. So that's probably weird, but so that kind of really dominated my whole viewing of the episode. LB, what did you think of it?
It wasn't the best first episode that Sword Art Online has ever done. I understand why they had to do an hour-long episode because there was just so much that they had to cram in, information-wise. But overall, it was still, Sword Art Online, so I'm not going to complain. I'm really glad that it's back. I've missed this show, something fierce.
Well, let me ask you something, because you say you think they needed to do an hour-long episode. What do you think it would have been like if they'd done that whole underworld sequence with, like, Kid Kirito and the other kids, and that all happened, and then at the end, Kirito wakes up and we realize he's, like, testing some VR, and that was the end of the episode. You think that wouldn't have been sufficient to start the season?
I think it would have been way too confusing. There were enough people chattering about on Discord about how the first half of the episode was really confusing because it didn't have a whole lot of context behind it until the second half, and even then, the second half kind of buried a lot of that in a lot of monologuing and technobabble. That's my word, not anybody else's. So yeah, I think that if they had tried to do just the underworld sequence and then cut it off right there, it would have confused a lot of people a lot more than it already did.
See, if they cut it off there, I think I would have been okay with that and been like, I'm interested to see how they tie this to the main storyline in episode 2. But then again, I'm already pretty into Sword Art Online, so I'm maybe not the audience member they need to worry about losing. Lifestyle, what did you think?
Yeah, I get why they did the hour-long episode, but I felt it was more because of the Kirito stabbing as a hook. That was a good hook. The first part was. I don't think we really got anything out of that first part yet, even in the second half. It wasn't bad. I didn't think it was bad. I was a little bored with it just because I wasn't really sure how any of it tied back in, to the series as a whole. But I'm very interested to see where it's going. I don't really have that much to say about it yet.
Yeah, I think for that whole first part, I think everybody's watching it kind of thinking like, okay, when is this going to start to become relevant?
I don't know,
So
that was
sort of.
definitely my thought the whole time. I think my favorite part of the episode was them playing GGO.
Yeah, and I actually thought it was weird to see Asuna playing GGO. Like, I actually thought she was like above GGO. Like, like if Kirito and the others would go to play that game, she'd just be like, oh, you do that. I'm gonna go play my high water elf and cast magic. I don't need your stupid gun games.
I think
But apparently not.
Her lightsaber, and she was okay with it.
Yeah, and we had Silica with like the what Jeep mounted machine gun. That was
Yeah.
that was nice. Let's see, what else is there? What else is there to say about this episode? Obviously, and I kind of had an inkling of this before the season started. Obviously, they're doing something with AI, the development of AI, and I think that's interesting because I've kind of never bought that AI characters in Sword Art Online, in anime in general, but in Sword Art Online in particular, are actually AIs. Like, Yui doesn't really feel like an AI to me. Like, she feels like a little kid who just has, like, computer superpowers. And in the Sword Art Online movie, in ordinal scale, I didn't really buy that the AI character in that was an AI, and she wasn't even supposed to be like a developed AI. She was supposed to be like a halfway there sort of AI, but she didn't. She felt like a person to me. So now I'm wondering if the fact that the AIs have always felt too human is actually kind of by design. So that
I
they're
think
actually dealing with it.
I think it always has been. It's just that's something they've hinted at rather than something they've ever tackled directly. So it's interesting to see that they at least look like they're going to tackle it more directly now.
Yeah, I wonder though, like with the conversation they start having this episode where Kuro's like, well, actually, the human soul resides in a series of tubes in your brain, or something like that, whatever he's saying.
Right.
Do you think maybe Sword Art Online is kind of getting like a little bit too big for its britches here, discussing like the nature of the human soul?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I think it's too early for me to really feel one way or another about it, just because all it's really done is bring up a concept so far.
Yeah, it's just there's something kind of funny about like, okay, Kirito, tell me all about the human soul. I need to hear it from you. But it's definitely interesting. I'll give it that. LB, you were gonna say?
Oh, I was just about to say that I was actually going to bring up the question of what did you guys think of Kirito's big monologue about soul technology, and did any of you did it make a lot of sense to you guys? Because I'm not a science person. I am the first person to admit that science and technology type things go over my head very easily. So when Kirito started monologuing about soul technology and how it resides in tubes inside your brain, it was not entirely clear to me what the hell he was talking about.
It was confusing to me too, because I have read a little bit about the brain and how some people believe like the way electrical impulses work in your brain is like that's your personality, like how your electrical impulses work as opposed to another person. So the idea that the soul is contained within the brain that way and it has something to do with electricity, that's I've heard before. But then when he started getting into like, okay, well, it's contained in a series of tubes, I was like, wait, where is Kawahara getting this from? Is this sort of like some sort of experimental theory, or is he just making things up out of whole cloth here? I don't actually know what's going on with that. Lei-sung, do you know any more than I do about this?
No, I thought it was interesting. I mean, some of the general ideas I've heard before, but nothing specific. It's not something like I've read up on. It might now that Kirito is throwing out these ideas because I'm curious, but it's definitely not something I'm an expert going into.
Well, it'll turn out that like the is the frontier of neurology, and like your soul actually is contained in a series of tubes, and this has only been discovered recently, and we learned through Sword Art Online. I don't know. I doubt it, but it was interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's just learning more about a real world theory, that might be interesting. But if I do that, I'll be sure to mention it later.
Yeah, well, whenever I end up, this is getting maybe a tiny bit off topic, but whenever I end up trying to read something about science or about biology to try to understand more, I always end up at the end more confused than when I started. Because like I just read like this long book about the way genetics work, and honestly, I think it just made me question everything I thought I knew about the way genetics work. Now I'm like, I have no idea how genetics work anymore. Okay, so Sword Art Online, definitely a gutsy premiere, leaving the audience wondering what the hell's going on, and then stabbing the main character. So we're definitely interested to see how they're gonna. I need to find a different word than interested. I'm gonna use the word interested like 50,000 times tonight, and it's gonna bother me. I'll just be like, we're psyched for this show. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're definitely engaged with what Sword Art Online is doing. The next show I had on the list was Index. I have not actually watched Index because it's not legally available in North America as far as I know, but I wanted to just mention it because the whole situation with Index is weird. Like it seems like Crunchyroll got the rights to it, but like only for Asia or something like that. Like when does this happen? Like LB, have you watched it?
I actually have not, because I find Index to be a little boring. I prefer Railgun. Don't ask me why, I just do. So I have not gone out of my way to watch this yet.
You prefer Railgun because of Only My Railgun. You heard Only My Railgun and you were like, I love this show, and that was that.
Honestly, I can tell you right now that any show that has a theme song by Flipside gets bonus points from me. That's one of the reasons why I'm watching Boarding School Juliet this season.
Oh, thank you for reminding me of that one, because that one's actually not on my list. Okay, Life Song, you've actually seen this Phantom episode of Index, right?
Yep.
And I believe Toma is punching things in the face, so it's 10 out of 10.
That's great. Yeah, 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10 Index. What Index again? But it's just, I mean, all I can think of that's going on is Crunchyroll couldn't come to an agreement with the Japanese company, I guess. But I don't know. That's really weird.
I mean, the suspicion I've seen a couple rumors going around is that somebody else actually has the license for the English Index, and they aren't giving it to Crunchyroll. It seems like it was actually pretty much every other language, every other region, except the English regions that Crunchyroll has it for. So, like including like Spanish speaking and French and all that stuff.
Well, I mean, it would kind of make sense if, say, for example, Netflix had it, but then wouldn't they have announced it by now?
Well, maybe. I mean, Netflix. I guess they typically do announce when they have licenses.
They do, you're saying?
Yeah, typically they do, and then who knows when it'll actually release, but they typically announce it.
Okay, so we still don't really know what's going on with Index. I just think it's, this kind of simulcast system with Crunchyroll and Funimation and now High Dive, this has been going on for years now. This has been going on since as far back as 2010. I mean, obviously anime seasons have been happening way before that, but this kind of system with the English language streaming sites and everything. And it seemed like it was pretty streamlined at this point. So to have Index, have a really popular show, suddenly be like, oh, no, you just can't see this in English. Sorry. Kind of comes as a surprise. So we will keep an eye on the Index story as it develops. More on this breaking news story. Okay. But it kind of gave me an excuse to have one less anime to watch, so it was sort of okay, at least for now. But I do hope we figure out what's going on with it soon and that it's available legally soon. Okay, that time I turned into a slime. Our isekai anime for the season. We all wrote this up and all really liked it, so I don't want to belabor the point too much. But I just want to say I was just reading a random Twitter thread that someone was going on about how isekai as a genre was completely creatively bankrupt because it was just fifth generation Tolkien ripoff at this point. And well, first of all, if you're going to accuse fantasy of being a Tolkien ripoff, then you have to accuse all fantasy of that, not just anime, not just isekai.
I feel like that's inaccurate from conception, because even back when Tolkien was writing Lord of the Rings and that stuff, there were actual, I mean, they weren't called isekai back then, but those kind of stories existed where characters would get transported into another world. That's a very different type of storytelling in the first place. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, even it's not exactly the same, but even a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court comes to mind.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
it's not a new concept. Neither of those are a new concept, but they're different. So
yeah, but anyway, just and I know that opinion. A lot of people are of that opinion that isekai is boring, isekai is played out. But then it just goes to show, sometimes you just need to take a slightly different take on the idea. Well, what if instead of being reincarnated as an adventurer with a sword, what if you were reincarnated as a slime? How would that go? And then suddenly it's a very different experience. So I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with that one. And it's nice to have one that's really just sort of, well, I'm not going to say it's completely lighthearted, because I mean, dude, the main character just gets stabbed out of nowhere in the first episode. And if you enjoy seeing protagonists get stabbed, this is the best anime season.
To be fair, that was one of the funniest death scenes I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Actually, you know how the dude is before I die, you must delete my hard drive.
Yep.
Earlier today. Earlier today, when I was watching Daikichi, I'm being seduced by the sexiest man alive, whatever, I was thinking, if I die suddenly, I want this deleted from my Crunchyroll queue. Anyway. Okay, so I'm not going to say it's completely lighthearted, but it does seem like it's going to be pretty light and fun going forward, so I'm excited for that. Anything further you want to say that before we move on, LB?
Just that if you haven't seen it yet, I'll repeat what I said in my review. Tsundere Dragon, that gives it a pass for the first episode at least.
Yeah, you were like, oh, there's a tsundere in the show that's better than Rin Tosaka. And I was like, what? That's insane. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, I shall never doubt LB again. Leifsong?
Yeah, nothing really else to say. It was good. I'm looking forward to seeing more.
Yeah. Okay, and I said this last week, but I think it's cool that the people, some of the main people behind that anime are going to be at Anime NYC. So hopefully there'll be a that time I got there'll be a slime panel, which I'm just going to call it the slime panel because I don't want to have to say that title all the time. Okay, and speaking of isekai shows, well, this isn't really isekai, but whatever. Speaking of fantasy shows, I wanted to bring up Goblin Slayer now because unlike that time I got turned into a slime, it is very not lighthearted. And thanks to Lifesong, I was warned going into this that there was some dark stuff at the beginning, and I am really glad Lifesong warned me because if I had just watched that thinking, oh, look at the picture, I bet it's like Konosuba or something, I would have been like seriously disturbed after watching this episode. Because it is really dark in the beginning, and I don't want to elaborate in too many details how it's dark, but basically every way you can imagine it could be dark, it is. And I was just looking before we started the podcast, and there's no sort of content warning or anything on Crunchyroll to let you know that this is for mature audiences. And I was just thinking about that because, I mean, the concept of trigger warnings have been kind of, a lot of people mock them, but then something like this comes along, and I'm like, there really should probably have been some kind of warning on Crunchyroll's main page. So that's where I am with it, just thinking about the ethics of just putting this up on Crunchyroll without a warning. LB, the last time I spoke to you earlier today, you had not seen it yet. Have you watched it?
No, I haven't yet. I'm going to. I just haven't yet.
Honestly, if you're dreading it, like I wouldn't make yourself do it. Because I kind of have that feeling I had back when I watched Claymore, and well, I haven't seen much of Berserk, but I get the impression Berserk is like this, that it's just, you're just filled with despair and feel like humans are just meat puppets to be hacked open and everybody's going to die, and it's just terrible. So.
I don't think that's fair overall for the series, but I guess I'm not sure.
Well, you had said that you, as far as you knew, there's some dark stuff in the beginning just to establish that goblins are bad. And yes, I am on the goblins are bad train. I do not need any more convincing.
Yeah, it was pretty convincing.
Yeah, but then, I actually was looking at the comments on Crunchyroll, which I normally don't do, but I was just curious to see how people were responding to the show in particular. And some people were saying, oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. The manga gets way darker than this. I'm like, wait, well, if it's going to go, it's one thing if this was a scene to just establish the threat of the goblins, but if the show goes on like this, I don't think I can continue watching it. Like, it's one thing to be like, okay, this is the dark episode, and then it's gonna get to a better place. But if this show continues to be like this, like, I'm not going to keep watching this for more than one episode. So
yeah, and I don't actually know. All I read of the manga was the original, the first chapter, which is what this covered. So I basically seen the first episode and read the first chapter.
I mean, other than the obvious, oh my god, it's scary and everything. What did you think of it?
It's actually less brutal than the manga,
which is terrifying, by the
way. yeah, no, I was mostly just like, oh, good, they're not gonna make me, watch as much as I had to read and stuff.
Yeah. The thing that is interesting about it, and this is kind of something that's aside from the violence and the gore, is that it's like at the beginning they're like, oh, we're gonna go to a level 1 dungeon and we're gonna fight some monsters. They're low-level monsters. It's easy. We don't need potions. We don't need preparations. It's kind of funny how that's the beginning of like so many anime and so many RPGs, and usually it's like, oh, these monsters are little and it's not that big a deal. And then I kind of feel like this was like this weird reality check, like, actually, if you went to a dungeon full of goblins, this is what would happen.
yeah, it was bad news. In the manga, as I remember it, and it's been a while since I read it, but basically you just start, you're already in the dungeon. They don't tell you really how you got there or who the party is. I mean, the immediate thought is, oh, this is the party of characters I'm going to be following for the next however many chapters this thing exists for, and then quickly they all die.
Yeah, and it's just the other characters, like the fact that they seem to think they're in like kind of like a typical JRPG sort of situation, and you know, they have 300 HP, but the goblins have 50 HP, so they'll be totally fine. And then like the horror and despair when they realize, oh, that's not what's going on here at all.
Yeah, see, in the manga, they were a little bit more prepared, I felt like, and they still got. I mean, like they weren't prepared in the sense they really were skilled fighters or anything, but they had at least some idea of what they were getting into, and then they just did things wrong and they got completely demolished.
Yeah.
And here it's like the manga was making it, or the anime was making it a lot harder. Like it was kind of giving you hints. You don't need to sympathize with these characters too much. They're doing something wrong.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if I'm gonna continue. I may wait and see kind of how people react to the following episodes before I watch them. Because I don't want to watch more scenes like this. Like I don't. It's not like I don't think scenes like this should ever exist or anything like that, but I just have a really hard time
Yeah, I understand.
tolerating them. So I don't know if I. But there are some things about the show that intrigue me, like the fact that the main character is a relatively low-powered healer, and the fact that she went through that, and then she's like, "I'm still an adventurer." Like it is kind of like, whoa, what happened to this girl that she goes through that? And she's just like, "Hey, this is just Tuesday. I'm fine," you know. So I am a little bit intrigued by it on that level, and of course, finding out what the deal is with the Goblin Slayer. How did he get so good at killing goblins? I'm not going to ask why he feels the need to kill goblins, because I think that's pretty obvious. So I don't know. I think I'm going to really play it by ear with this one. If I hear the internet freaking out like, oh my god, they showed so much gore in Goblin Slayer episode 2, I'm not even going to try to watch it. But if it seems like the worst is over, I'll probably keep watching it. Lifesong, are you going to keep watching it for the time being?
Say that again?
I'm sorry. I was just asking if you're going to keep watching it for the time being.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty much okay with dark fantasy stories in general, and I knew what was coming, so I'm good. I'm ready to see more. I'm hoping that it won't be as uncomfortable as this first episode, but I don't know for sure. And
yeah, I was asking myself earlier today after I watched this episode and was kind of upset. I was just like, you know, what is it about when anime does this kind of story that it just feels so incredibly full of despair? Because I mean, obviously, for shows that have this kind of dark violence and
anime has been known to actually end where the world blows up and everyone dies, and you know, most stories don't do that. Anime is one of the only ones where that actually can't happen. So I think it, you know, that there's this sort of sense of, even if you don't expect it, there's always that extra sense of, well,
yeah, there's just something about anime, because I mean the example that nowadays comes to mind when you talk about, you know, violence and gore and sexual violence is Game of Thrones, and I haven't seen all of Game of Thrones, but I've seen the first several seasons, and even the bad stuff in Game of Thrones does not give me that same feeling of like existential dread that I got from like episode 1 of the show, and I'm just trying to parcel out why that is, because it's not like the show went and did anything. I don't know.
I haven't watched or read Game of Thrones, confession. But I think part of it is just like in anime, typically a lot of it is character driven, and they introduce you to the characters. They want you to like the characters. They want you to invest in the characters. So then when they do something really brutal to the characters, it's like not necessarily unexpected, but it feels different.
It just feels wrong.
Right.
Like, wait, they're all supposed to level up, get to level 2, and then get a potion. And what's going on here?
Right. And whereas in dark epic fantasy, they kind of make you not like a lot of the characters. That's just typical and normal. So when they all get killed, you're like, yeah, well, they kind of deserved it.
That's true. A lot of the people who die in Game of Thrones, you were like, well, that dude had it coming.
Right. See, I haven't even read Game of Thrones, and I guess that's typical. That's just typical of the genre.
Yeah, it seems almost odd to me that you have no familiarity with Game of Thrones, because you like epic fantasy.
It's a genre I like, and it's a genre I know plenty about, and then there's Game of Thrones, and I haven't read it.
See, now I'm torn whether or not I want to discuss it with you because, like, I kind of do, but I haven't really been that into it. And if you start reading it and we start talking about it, then I'll like start caring again, and so over that. Anyway, okay, but we're not gonna talk about Game of Thrones anymore. We're gonna move on from Goblin Slayer, and and the issue I raised about having a sort of content warning about Crunchyroll. What do you guys think about that? Do you think I'm asking for Crunchyroll to kind of be like my nanny, or do you think that's a reasonable concern? LB.
It might be something that they might want to consider in the future, but then again, anime is one of those weird things where one episode can be exceptionally dark and twisted and violent and sexy, and then the next episode is moe blobs, bouncing to and fro. So I think it'd be really difficult to say, this series deserves a content warning, whereas this series doesn't.
Yeah, it's almost like they'd have to do it for each individual episode for it to make sense.
Yeah.
Lightsong, what do you think?
I mean, personally, generally speaking, I find content warnings annoying, just because I don't want to know what I'm walking into. But I do understand why people want them and why it's valuable to have them. And then there's something like Goblin Slayer where it makes more sense than usual. And it's like, it's hard to say, well, I don't ever want to see them because, I mean, obviously I respect the idea. That's why I warned you at LB. So
yeah, because it's like, I mean, I understand why they can be annoying, and it's especially annoying when they're overused to the point where, like, oh, somebody gets slapped in this episode, violence, content warning. It's like, oh, come on,
I mean, it's gotten to the point where a lot of rating systems where it's like, I'm bored and I want something to watch or read, I'll go look at ratings for things that are supposedly really bad, and then, oh, hey, there's something interesting.
But it's like it's like I understand the annoyance sometimes of content warnings and how they're overused, and also the fact that some people can be triggered by all sorts of different things, and people can be upset by all sorts of different things, and there's no content warning system that would cover everything without just putting a blanket warning on every single thing that exists. But the fact of the matter is, if you hadn't warned me about Goblin Slayer and I just walked into watching today, I probably would be too upset to be doing this podcast right now, because I would have been like, I need to sit and watch My Little Pony, okay, for a couple of hours until I feel better. So it's just it seemed like it would be dishonest for me to not admit that I want content warnings in some cases. So yeah, I'm still not sure how to feel about that.
I don't know if they need to be on Crunchyroll. That might be another question too, is whether or not it would be a good third-party service almost. You could tell them, hey, let me know when anime does this.
I just had a thought, and it's a horrible thought. It's like, that's kind of what Anime Feminist does.
Yeah, they're a little more hardcore than what I was thinking of, but yeah.
They do warn you this anime does bad thing. That they accomplish, so gotta give them that. Okay, we're gonna move on from Goblin Slayer now to Between Sky and Sea. What's funny about this show? First, I guess just because of the water theme, I was reminded of High School Fleet, even though it's really not like High School Fleet very much at all. But like, it's amazing how smart High School Fleet looks in comparison to this show. Like, yeah. High School Fleet looks like friggin' like Tolstoy level brilliance compared to this show. It's just like it's just incomprehensible. Are you trying to hush your kitties, your doggies?
Yeah, my dog. Sorry.
Okay. I'm jealous that you have pets, but let's see. Are you petting your dog? Is your dog happy?
I think she wants out real fast. I'll be right back.
Okay. So, Lysong, now that I have you on the spot, explain all the reasons why you hate it Between Sky and Sea.
Oh, my head hasn't recovered from it. I don't think well, yeah. What even was it? What was the purpose of it?
To promote a mobile game.
That's what I got out of it, that it was an advertisement for a mobile game, but it was like, why would you bring up political things like what it does
Like sexual
advertise
politics.
a mobile game. Like that's like it seems like the absolute dumbest thing they could have done.
Yeah, and I think maybe they've got to find another way to advertise mobile games rather than making an anime adaptation for everything. Like, can't they just take out a few giant billboards or something?
You would think.
That said, I mean, I don't want to see. I feel like when I'm like getting into so much hyperbole about how bad the show is, I'm kind of being unfair to it because there were some redeeming elements. Like I like the fact that a lot of it takes place underwater. I really like underwater scenes. Someone's got to make a good mermaid anime finally, besides Moromi-san, which was good.
I was just about to mention that.
Yeah, but someone's got to make a good mermaid anime so I can stop having a half-ass it with shows like this and Manchu and all that other stuff. Because I can watch my friggin' mermaid anime and just see pretty underwater scenery in peace. But I do like that aspect of it. And I mean, it is, well, it's different. It's got that going for it. So it's not entirely devoid of redeeming value. LB, you were more positive on this one than Lifesong was.
Yeah, I really, you know what? This was stupid in the good way. I really was able to buy into it. The lore isn't any dumber than, say, Uma Musume. So I was able to just get into it and have fun with it. I didn't, have any major qualms about it. We'll see how it goes for the next couple of episodes, but this first episode was just, stupid fun for me.
See, I'm going to disagree with you, and I'm going to say the lore is dumber than Uma Musume. Because Uma Musume, other than the fact that they just happen to be born horse girls, like it's not that weird. They don't have weird cell phone apps that they use to like power up their legs or something. Or maybe they do if you actually play the mobile game. I don't know. But I mean, I can make fun of it all day long. But the fact remains, I'm probably going to still be watching it because I want to see. I just want to see how they can possibly develop this. I'm just at a loss for words on this show, so we're going to move on. Okay, this is something new that just came out. These aren't in chronological order from when they were released. That just didn't seem like a fun way to do things, so I just put them down in kind of random order. Release the Spice, the kind of sort of magical girl anime, only it's kind of like more of a spy magical girl anime, and like they eat nutmeg and then they get powered up. This was surprisingly good, I thought. I didn't really have much in the way of expectations for it, and then it had some really cool background music that kind of sounded like Nine Inch Nails instrumentals. And the girls are doing like, it's definitely not your standard magical girl show. It's kind of more of a sci-fi magical girl sort of hybrid thing. And it was just seemed promising. Has anyone else watched this? Because it did just come out, I think.
I watched it today.
I have not seen it yet.
Okay, what did you think, LD?
I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I went into it kind of expecting, just kind of an average fare, but it was a lot better than it has any right to be.
And then you've got the main character who was basically like friggin' Wolverine with her super senses.
Yeah, I grabbed a screen cap of the line, so this is what muscle soreness tastes like.
I thought of doing that, and I was like, when am I ever going to use this? It's probably better I don't have an occasion to use that. If anything, she's better than Wolverine, because I think Wolverine even can't like lick you and tell like, if your knee hurts or something. So, but
that is definitely one of the more unique superpowers that I have seen come across my way in anime.
What, being able to lick someone and tell how they're injured?
Yeah.
Oh man, there was another anime that did that, and I'm drawing a blank.
I think you're right, and I can't think of it either. I'll put an addendum if I think about it between now and I post this. And also, this show isn't taking itself completely seriously, but it's not. You're supposed to take it somewhat seriously, right? But then there's the fact that the way they power themselves up is basically they eat like spices. and it's not like, it doesn't appear to be like some like super magical spices or something. It just seems like they're normal spices. Like you just chew on a stick of cinnamon and then you get the power to like backflip or something. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. Like, is that just a silly thing among the relatively serious things we're dealing with? Or is there actually going to end up being some lore there where it's going to be like, oh, actually, that's not that stupid. So, anything else to say about it, LB?
No, this was kind of schlocky fun, and like I said, I enjoyed it more than I thought that I would, so I'll be sticking with it for a while longer.
Yeah, me too. And I want to hear more cool background music. That was really unusual. Okay, moving on to Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, which for future reference, I'm probably only just going to call Bunny Girl Senpai because that's fine. That's enough identification.
Yeah.
I was actually really pleasantly surprised by this show because I just wasn't expecting anything, but then it actually was kind of reminiscent of the first season of Monogatari to me. Just the conversations that the male lead and the female lead were having, and it seemed like they were both fairly intelligent and they weren't falling into common anime dialogue pitfalls. And the whole idea that people are having psychological problems and then they're starting to manifest physically. I mean, it's not like it's this deep original idea or something, but there's a lot of places they could go with it. So I'm intrigued. Life Song?
I actually haven't seen it yet. Sorry.
You didn't watch a show with a girl dancing around in a bunny girl suit?
I mean, it's definitely on my priority list.
What does it take to please you, man?
I haven't opened in my browser. Like, it was next up after Gridman, which I also haven't finished.
You haven't finished Gridman?
No, I am 13 minutes, 18 seconds into it.
All right. Well, let's finish up with Bunny Girl Senpai. Let's see. And when they were talking about puberty syndrome, at first I was confused, and I thought they were actually talking about like Chunibyo, like Chunibyo middle school syndrome, but they're actually talking about something completely different. So I just wanted to get that out there for any viewers who might be confused. I was probably literally the only person confused by that, but whatever. Okay, so I hope Bunny Girl Senpai continues to kind of be intelligent, and I guess that's really all I have to say about it. Surprisingly intelligent. We're going to move on to SSS Gridman, which nobody's watched, or everybody's watched part of.
I tried. But me and Trigger we don't get along. I've come to this conclusion.
See, I feel like I want to be like this peacemaker between you and Trigger. Like I'll send you a bouquet of roses and say they're from Trigger. Try to get you to like their anime again. I liked Gridman, but I could totally understand being frustrated and bored with it because it did have an odd way of beginning. Life Song, what did you think of the part that you saw?
I mean, I'm really enjoying the episode so far. I like in school, this guy who's forgot everything about himself. Like the school itself, like it doesn't just feel like typical 4-coma school antics. They more feel like people in school, and I don't know. I'm just the little details of what's going on. I'm appreciating watching it, and I'm engaged with it. Which
maybe you can help me with this then, because the whole tone the first half of the episode, I mean, it kind of changes later on, which isn't much of a spoiler. The whole tone the first half of the episode, that kind of like intentionally kind of awkward, disjointed, kind of stilted tone to the dialogue, that reminded me of something, and I can't figure out what. Like, I know it reminds me of another show, and I have no idea what. I mean, I said it reminds me a little bit of Monogatari, but I don't think that's what I'm thinking of.
The thing that's reminding me of, like the overall feel of that beginning was actually Fooly Cooly.
This is probably the time I should admit I actually haven't finished Fooly Cooly, which is like a mark of shame, I know. But
well, the big thing that reminds me of it is, in Fooly Cooly they've got the medical mechanic hand in the background. In Gridman, you have this giant kaiju in the background that only the main character can see.
Yeah, and actually, this is a little bit of a spoiler for you, Life Song, but There's part of me that was hoping that the rest of the characters would never actually see the kaiju, that like everything would continue to be in the main character's head, and he'd just be like fighting kaiju, and people would just be like going about their business. So when other people suddenly started seeing what was going on, I was kind of like, "Aw, this isn't what I wanted."
I was starting to wonder whether that was going to happen or not.
Yeah. Interesting thing about this episode in Studio Trigger is because if you remember back when Kill La Kill was airing, and the animation was a little bit choppy to say the least. You know, Trigger kind of got this reputation for cutting corners on animation, which hasn't been true so much lately. I mean, I don't think that was true of Darling in the Franxx. But they did scenes in this episode where the animation was obviously rough as like a stylistic choice. Like it matched the dialogue, but because it's Trigger, I saw comments online like, "Oh, stupid Trigger! They can't even be bothered with in betweens in their animation." So I just thought that was funny that because it's Trigger, like a lot of people didn't realize that might have actually been an intentional artistic choice.
Right. Yeah.
So
No,
it's
that's typical with anime fans.
Yeah, so it's like on the one hand that's typical for anime fans. On the other hand, does Trigger kind of deserve it for how few frames some of those episodes of Kill La Kill had? So
I mean, they did earn it. It's
yeah. So I'm gonna keep watching this show in the hopes I can figure out what the hell it reminds me of, because it's seriously bugging me. Wilson hasn't watched it yet, and I'm gonna like make him watch it in hopes he can figure it out.
Well,
he's not happy with me.
Can help you next time he's on, because he seemed to be more familiar with what it's based on and stuff.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, he tends to have encyclopedic knowledge of that kind of stuff. Okay, moving on to Anima Yell. I'm in a weird position with this anime because it was one of the things I watched immediately after Goblin Slayer, and I so needed something totally innocuous. So I think this anime probably had a more favorable impression on me than it otherwise would have, because I was like, oh, thank God, it's just a cute girl anime with pink hair. No one's getting killed, no one's getting murdered, no one's getting limbs chopped off. Wonderful. So I actually had a pretty positive impression of it, but I mean, I think it was pretty formulaic in terms of how these girls forming a club sort of anime go. So I don't know if it was actually good or just came at a convenient time for me. LB, you got bored with it, right? Did you even finish it?
No, I got to the 9-minute mark and excuse me, I was so just annoyed by the main character not being able to say the word cheer that I finally
like she's like a Pokemon.
Cheer.
Yeah, I finally gave it up at the 9-minute mark. Maybe I'll go back to it someday, but there's so much other stuff that I want to watch this season that I just didn't have I didn't have it in me to keep going.
Yeah, I can understand that. Life Song?
I finished it. I will say that. I thought it was pretty boring, honestly. But the one part of it that I'll give it credit for, because I like the last little bit where they get all sentimental and the two girls become friends and whatnot. Okay, like that was good, but that was all of 1 minute. The rest of it was really bad jokes.
Really bad jokes, and the whole like, oh, I'm not going to join your club because I have a traumatic experience, but I'm going to make you join my club through the power of my love and how much I want to do this thing.
Was it love, or was it just plain energy? Like, she was annoying. She was really, really annoying.
She was annoying, but I like the fact that they made a point that she's the kind of person that goes around and helps other people, because so often, like, when you get the protagonists in these shows who get, like, obsessed with, you know, cheerleading or soccer or baseball or, you know, whatever their club is, and they're like, I want to do the thing! I'm definitely going to do the thing! They're, like, so obsessed with it that they don't really seem to care about anybody else. So it's kind of refreshing that at least, even though the protagonist is annoying, like, she actually does, like, do nice things for other people, so you can't, like, completely hate her, I think. So.
Yeah, it worked. That aspect of it, it was good. I just felt like there was too much of it. Yeah. Maybe they were pushing it too hard.
I mean, I'm probably going to continue watching this. The question is, am I going to continue watching this just for the privilege of it not being Goblin Slayer? You know,
so. Just watch it every week after Goblin Slayer, and for some reason, it's the best thing of the season.
Yeah, and that's how I'll get through this season. Uza Maid, or the English translation of the show was something like Our Maid is Too Annoying, but on Crunchyroll they actually have it listed as Uza Maid, so I guess I'll call it that. The one by Doga Kobo with the maid who is a lolicon and her lolly charge. I I like this episode a lot, and I looked up the director, and I should have written down his name. I'll add it to the post, but he's a really experienced comedy director. He did Love Lab, he did Sabagebu, he did Yuri, a lot of other things like that. So not surprising that this seemed really well directed in terms of the comic timing and stuff like that. But like a lot of people, I am kind of scratching my head at the premise, wondering like, is this really such a good idea? I don't know. I mean, it definitely cannot sustain more episodes of these kinds of lolly jokes. They've got to diversify the humor, or else this is going to get old really fast. LB?
I agree with you in that the lolicon humor is already wearing thin, and if it doesn't do something else in a major hurry, it's gonna get dropped pretty fast. I'm actually not even sure if I want to watch the second episode. I mean, the first episode wasn't as bad as a lot of people made it out to be, but the entire premise is a little squicky.
Yeah, and like, it's an interesting thing with a premise like that, because I mean, I'm in favor of things being allowed to exist even if they would be totally wrong in real life, because it's fiction, it's fantasy, it doesn't have to be real. But on the other hand, that doesn't necessarily mean I want to watch it either, so so I'm kind of not sure exactly how I feel about that. Life Song?
For me, a lot of it depends on whether or not they push it past the point of where it was in this episode. It's like, you've got this character, and she's like a former, I'm gonna get the name wrong, Japanese Defense Force.
Close enough.
Yeah.
She's military, and a lot of the times when she's like the lolicon antics, they're things she says. They're not necessarily things she does, and I found myself wondering, well, how much is she actually serious about wanting to play dress up with a cute girl and get paid for it? I mean, that part is really obvious, but
serious enough that she asked about it at her job interview place.
Yeah.
I'm actually wondering if they're gonna, to kind of give this some more reason for being, they're going to give her some sort of backstory where it's not just that she's a lolicon, although she is, but maybe she like failed to save some blonde girl during one of her like combat missions, and she was lying there dying, having lost an eye, thinking, oh, if I survive this, I will find a blonde girl just like that, and I will make her life so happy to make up for the blonde girl I couldn't save. Or something like that. And if that happens,
something ridiculous like that. Yeah.
If that happens, will that make the show okay?
I don't know. I mean, personally, I'm not looking for justification at this point. As long as it remains somewhat agnostic about why she is the way she is, and it doesn't push into creepy territory, I think it's funny enough that I'm okay with what it's doing.
Yeah, and also, I kind of feel like, man, I almost don't even want to bring this up, but like, I kind of feel like she doesn't even really have a sexual interest in Misha so much. It's like she wants to dress her up in pretty clothes. She wants to pat her on the head. She kind of wants to treat her. She kind of wants to treat her like the way like my daughter's older cousin treats her. Like, oh, you're such a cute little doll. Sit on my knee. I'll play with you.
I got the feeling that if there was a sexual fetish there, it was for the clothing and not for the girl. And part of what helped emphasize that is at the end, what she shows up wearing a schoolgirl, like a gym outfit for like a second grader. It's like, she has a schoolgirl outfit for a second grader in her wardrobe.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know if the show's going to continue this way, but if it continues to seem like she actually doesn't have really any sexual interest in her, and it's more of just like an aesthetic thing, like I like the idea of this, then that kind of makes it a lot tamer, in my opinion, anyway. So
I mean, she didn't do anything outrageous. She says outrageous things, but she didn't do any. Oh, she does some outrageous things too. She didn't do anything outrageously sexual. Is that the way to put it?
Yeah.
Hiding in her bath, waiting for her, I think kind of counts.
That's true.
I guess. I don't know. I think you can interpret that multiple ways, but.
Okay, so we'll keep watching Uzumade. LB might keep watching Uzumade to see if they go to a weird sex place. Hopefully not.
I hope not.
Okay. The girl in Twilight, I wanted to like this, And there are things about it I like. I like the interest in old radios. My dad's a ham radio fanatic, so I've been surrounded by like old, half-broken radio equipment for like my whole life. So it's like, oh, an anime that deals with radio stuff. This is kind of cool. But it seemed like the fantasy world they went to just kind of lacked any sort of hook for me to be interested in.
It really didn't have a good hook.
Yeah.
That was really the problem with the episode, is that it didn't have a particularly compelling hook. There were some interesting ideas, but it was like, well, where's the hook? Come on.
Yeah, I liked some little things about it, like the fact that they go to a coffee shop. Of course, I like that they go to a coffee shop, but they go to a coffee shop and you see there's actually like old ham radio equipment on the walls and stuff. So just like little details like that of the settings, like, oh, that's kind of interesting. They're not just, they're really getting into this radio theme. They're not just...
Yeah, I felt like they were setting up for quite a bit, and I suspect that if we go back and watch it later, we'll actually see, oh, a lot of that was purposeful. The problem is that it just didn't have it didn't have something really compelling about it. It's not that it didn't have interesting elements or potentially interesting elements. It just didn't give us a particularly good reason to care about any of them.
Yeah, there's no particularly good reason to be like, I need to see what happens in episode 2. I mean, I think the hook is supposed to be that you've got the two Asukas, and you've got the one ditz Asuka and the one badass Asuka, and it's like, well, how did the badass Asuka get so badass? But I don't actually care. So.
Yeah, I didn't care either. That was the problem. It's like, well, and then you've got the thing with her brother having died, and he's dead in both worlds, or probably her brother, but you're not really given enough. And there's no emotional connection with any of the things that are going on. It's just, it just happens.
Although at least it's a tragic dead little brother instead of a tragic dead little sister. So, I kind of.
Well, we don't know. There could be other world lines where it's a dead little sister too.
Oh no! Is this going to go all Steins Gate on us?
It could.
It is a little bit.
Her mother, maybe their mother ate different things in different world lines. And,
well, the fact that they're using kind of outdated technology to travel in time and/or space does make it kind of similar to Steins Gate a little bit, tiny bit.
Yeah.
LB, you haven't watched this, right?
I watched the first few minutes of it, and I
decided you had better things to do with your time.
Yeah, I didn't care for the characters.
Yeah, and they tried to do things to make the characters charming, like the way the girl bribed the teacher with like her family's like miso recipe, but it just kind of fell kind of flat. You didn't really end up caring about any of the characters in this episode. So I'm going to give it another. I want to give it another episode or two, but if it doesn't do anything to hook me soon, it's getting dropped. I assume Lifesong are probably in the same category.
Yep. Yeah, I really want to like this one, and I'm actually very disappointed that I don't feel very strongly about it at all.
Yeah, I mean, it looked nice and had that going for it. Run Like the Wind. Was I the only one who watched this?
No, I watched it.
I'm sorry. I'm not remembering who saw what. I really like this a lot. It even did things that I sometimes don't even like it when anime tries to do, but like it worked. So that was cool. I just wonder how they're going to make long distance running compelling, because it's not the most cinematic sport. So, I mean, I get that it's probably going to be very character driven, and that's going to be the draw more than action sequences. But I'm just wondering if they can actually keep up the interest level that I had for it in this episode. What did you think, LB?
I liked it. I didn't have a whole lot to say about it when I was done with it, but I have turned it over in my head a few times in the last few days since I watched it. Like I said, I enjoyed it. My big thing is how this one guy is going to convince all these people that, yes, being part of the track club is actually, something that you want to do, after he completely and utterly tricked all of them into joining a club that they didn't even know existed.
Yeah, because like if someone doesn't want to run for their own, their own health or their own satisfaction, it's like you're basically telling them to torture themselves.
Yeah, basically.
So, and I say this as a jogger, but it's kind of hard to believe that he would actually succeed in getting all those people to start running. But well, that's why it's anime. So we shall see. And I kind of like the kind of like evil mastermind of the club because it's kind of reminiscent of iShield 21 and like evil demon quarterback, although in a much more low key way on the show. But so I'm digging it. But just real quick, did the treatment of the black character strike you as odd in any way?
I didn't notice anything particularly odd about it.
Okay, because I thought it was maybe like a little suspect, but that's in the realm of like looking for things to nitpick. It wasn't like I thought it was offensive or anything, but it's like if someone had said they found it mildly offensive, I would have been like, okay, I can see where you're coming from. So I just wanted to just the fact that his intro is like he's standing there naked. It's like, hi, I am foreigner from continent of Africa. Anyway, but then maybe I'm the real racist for
I haven't seen it yet, but that is an odd typical thing where they'll do that in anime where they'll have the foreigner who just doesn't follow social norms at all.
Doesn't understand Japanese concept of privacy.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen what he does in the episode, but I've seen that in other episodes of other anime, and I've always kind of wondered, could that be presented better? Probably, but at the same time, I don't know how you present that difference without it being a little offensive.
Yeah. All right. Just not something really important, but just something I'm just going to be keeping an eye on kind of as I continue to watch the show, because I'm definitely watching more of it. Bloom Into You. I want to say the Yuri show, but now I'm wondering if it's really Yuri, if it's really more of an unrequited love situation, because we know one of the girls is in love. The other one, not so sure. What'd you think of this one, Lifesong?
I haven't seen it yet. It's on my queue. Sorry.
They have tea steeping in this anime. You wouldn't believe the way the tea bag steeps. You can see like the tea coming out of the bag. It's amazing.
I have 3 shows open right now. It is Gridman, Bunny Girl Senpai, and then the third one is Bloom Into You.
Well, you should watch Bloom Into You first if you like tea.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll do that and then finish Gridman.
Okay. LB?
I really liked a lot of aspects of this episode up until the last couple of minutes.
Oh, that's right, because you thought the love confession kind of came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, it felt to me really kind of rushed and forced because they spent a good chunk of this episode talking about, I don't understand a feeling of love. I don't understand this pressure that we should be in love, and the other girl agrees. And then all of a sudden, by the way, I've only known you for 2 days, but I'm in love with you.
I was okay with that because I kind of thought, here's someone who never had that kind of visceral, heart-fluttering feeling, and suddenly she gets it. And she's like, oh, wait a minute, all of a sudden I actually understand this. But then she's kind of, thrown off by it because it's so sudden and she doesn't know how to handle it. So then after she confesses, she's like, whoa, I didn't just say that. That didn't just happen. So it seemed like, it seemed plausible enough to me. I'll put it that way.
That makes sense.
I do think this anime is interesting because the way the main character is talking about how the way she sees romance portrayed in anime and shoujo manga and stuff like that, like she never feels that way at all, and she's wondering what that means. And I think that's something that's interesting to deal with in general for anybody, but especially as a teen, because you always see love presented as being love at first sight, super duper over the top, and then when you don't feel that way, you think, oh well, I can't possibly have feelings for this person because I don't have hearts for eyes, I don't have doki doki shita, but and I think it's interesting to deal with that, like, well, even if I didn't have that moment of like, oh my gosh, I'm in love, is it possible this is developing into real love? Is it possible this love might be more real because I didn't have that sudden fluttering moment but kind of came to it more gradually? I don't know. If this anime deals with that, then I think it'll be really up my alley. But that could be me reading too much into a couple of lines in the first episode. So we shall see. But we're both sticking with this one, right?
Yeah, I think so. If for no other reason, I thought that this episode was really pretty, and I can really appreciate that. I thought that the aesthetic choices of making the animation really soft was just a really good choice.
Yeah, and also, like, 95% of this episode was in Twilight, so I kind of feel like this was the real girl in Twilight. The other girl in Twilight was an imposter show. So, okay, we're going to move on to Daikichi. The subtitle is something like, I'm being harassed by the sexiest man alive. And wow, Life Song had said something like, wow, I really hate this main character, like 2 minutes in. And as soon as I started watching, I immediately knew what you meant. You just wanted to smack him.
You just want to
across
like
the street.
push him off a cliff somewhere.
I know, but it's like it's a weird thing this anime did, because they make you like immediately really dislike the main character, and then so when he starts getting like sexually harassed by this bigger, stronger guy, you're kind of like, yay! It's like, wait a minute, I shouldn't be happy about this.
There's nothing morally correct about this at all.
It's so wrong. I mean, and I was kind of surprised that they actually did seem to sleep together in the first episode, because I thought they were gonna, kind of draw out the will they or won't they, but no, it's like actually gonna be like a relationship. So, I'm sorry?
Yeah, no, I was agreeing with you.
Okay. There were aspects of the show that were kind of interesting, like the parts where they were actually talking about acting. I found that interesting. That sort of took me out of the show a little bit. And I thought, oh yeah, I guess people do have kind of different approaches to acting, and if you try to do the wrong one, it's going to seem really forced, and so on and so forth. But then I would go back and like remember the actual show I was watching and be like, oh yeah, this guy's just like a rapist. Okay, that's great.
Right, yeah, that was definitely my takeaway. The acting stuff I didn't follow, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I could see. I hesitate to use the term guilty pleasure, because I'm just. There's a lot of reasons I don't know if that's a good term, but it would be hard to watch the show even for that, because I actually find the guys on this show kind of unattractive. Like, they're really like gaunt and bony, and like I know that like guys in anime like this are usually tall and thin, but like these guys all look like they really need a sandwich, like several sandwiches. It just looks uncomfortable. So I mean, the thing with Super Lovers is, as dumb as Super Lovers was, like the art was really nice, the character designs were really nice. I could just kind of sit there and be like, oh, look at the pretty people on the screen, it's okay. And I can't even do that with this show. So I don't know if I'd be able to watch any more of it. I might try, just out of kind of curiosity, like where is this even going to go now? But I don't recommend it. Anything further on Daikichi?
No.
Okay, we're getting there. We're actually going through this faster than I thought. So yay, efficiency. Okay, Ms. Vampire, who lives in the neighborhood. This was actually pretty much what I was expecting. I didn't know they were going to pull the otaku card with the vampire, that because she stays up all night and stuff, she's an otaku, and she has a dakimakura in her coffin and stuff like that. Sometimes I wonder, are we really seeing too much of like practically every character in anime has to be an otaku at this point? But that's kind of neither here nor there. It was just kind of fun and cute and nice, and the fact that the main character is kind of stalkerish in this instance, like often that kind of character is off-putting, but in this instance it kind of works, because like the person that she's stalking is like an apex predator. So it's just like the role reversal, where the vampire is like, wow, this person is kind of stalking me. I'm not sure if I like this.
I thought the joke was pretty funny, where she's terrifying the vampire by offering to let her drink her blood.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, I can't talk. Oh my god, I need to learn how to talk on podcasts. The part where she cuts herself and then Sophie Twilight drinks her blood, I actually found that surprising, because the way they were developing Sophie Twilight, I thought she was the kind of civilized vampire, to the point where actually drinking blood from someone would like disgust her. Like I thought her.
I think she was more terrified by the fact that the other girl is just offering it like freely and aggressively. I think that was more what it was.
Yeah, but I kind of like the idea that she's a vampire who drinks blood but has no interest in like biting anyone's neck or something, because that would be disgusting. So it'd be like, you may like hamburgers. That doesn't mean you would go up to a cow and just like bite it. You wouldn't do that. So.
True. Yeah, that's true.
LB?
Yeah, I really liked this one. I really liked the humor in this episode. The parts that you guys just mentioned, where Sophie is creeped out by this really overly enthusiastic teenage girl, really struck a good chord with me. I laughed. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be keeping up with this one.
And there's something nice about seeing like a really low-key vampire too. because like so many vampire shows, and I say this as someone who's watched them and likes a lot of them, but like it always has to be so dramatic, and everything is like super gothic, and there's lightning flashing, and she's like, oh yeah, I stay up at night, so I watch anime, I drink blood out of a teacup, it's all good. It's just kind of a nice change of pace.
Great. I think more than anything else, Sophie was the real selling point of the show.
Yeah, so I think it's safe to say we're all going to keep watching this. Next thing I have on my list, which I think only I watch, Skullface bookseller Honda-san. Anyone else watch this?
No, I was told that I should, but I haven't.
Lifesong, what did you say?
Said not yet.
Okay, now this is the show I watched directly after Goblin Slayer, so it seemed kind of creepy to me, but that was probably Goblin Slayer's fault, again. So, I said last episode that I really wanted Honda-san to be a skeleton who was really committed to customer service, and he is. So yeah, I mean, good in general, but there's a sequence at the end where he's dealing with foreigners coming in asking for BL, and they're so completely shameless about it, and he's like kind of freaked out by it because he's, I guess he's just kind of used to people kind of like being like kind of stealthy about their BL purchases, and then these like foreigners come in and ask in English like, where is your BL section? I want some yaoi and stuff like that, and he's kind of freaking out. And
that sounds like a Japanese merchant at an American Anime Con. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, so I'm watching. I'm like, oh God, is that what Japanese fans think of us? I mean, I'm not even Fedroshi.
That is totally at least a stereotype.
So it was mildly uncomfortable to watch, thinking like, wait, is this what Japanese fans think I'm like? I'm not this obnoxious, am I? But I don't know. I think I just kind of felt a little weird, creeped out by it, because I just watched Goblin Slayer, and then I want to watch something light and fluffy, and then the dude has a surprisingly detailed skull, and I was like, I don't know if I like this. But I think that's just because of the mood I was in, and Honda-san isn't actually dark or creepy or anything at all. No, maybe a tiny bit creepy, but not. It's more like
He's
that kind of quirky. It's not Overlord creepy. No.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a lot. This is probably a bad comparison, but almost like reading like independent comics, like Robert Crumb or something. Like things are kind of ugly and awkward, but it's intentional. I kind of got that vibe from it a little bit. And I know there's a better comparison than Robert Crumb, which is like 50 million years more like that than the vibe I got from Honda-san. But that's the best I can do for right now. So. I'm definitely not saying you guys have to drop everything you're doing and pick up Honda-san, but I'd be curious to see your thoughts on the what's with these foreigners coming in and buying all my yaoi segments. Okay, and that was actually the end of my list. But Lifesong, you mentioned Boarding School Juliet, which I'll be honest, I completely forgot that.
Oh no, that was
that existed.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, so LB's, should we watch that? What's going on with that?
Boarding School Juliet is interesting in that it's really difficult to tell how serious they're taking things, because, I mean, it starts with a big schoolyard courtyard brawl between these two rival factions, which, by the way, are named like the Black Doggies and the White Kitties. So yeah, so literally right there, it's like, okay, so I'm not supposed to take this seriously. And then the characters are having this serious internal debate. The male lead, at least, is having this serious internal debate of, oh, I love her, but I can't admit it because we're enemies. And it's like, oh, okay, so I am supposed to take this seriously. And then it goes on to another fight scene where after the male lead confronts some other members of his faction, an arrow flies over the wall and sticks into one of the guys' heads with a message attached to it. And it's like, oh, so I'm not. And it just was really off-putting. I think the main problem, though, is that my expectations for it were a little too high. I should have gone in with something a little more tempered. But overall, it wasn't horrible. Not something that anybody needs to go out of their way to watch, but it was all right.
So, like, who wins, the White Doggies or the Black Kitties, or wait, I got that backwards.
No, I don't even think it matters. So far, no one wins. It's very much a forbidden relationship series where where the lead is Romeo, and why they couldn't just make the female lead Juliet, I don't know. But instead, they name her Persia. So it's like, okay, whatever.
Well, maybe Juliet's going to be revealed to be his childhood friend.
That's actually entirely possible.
I think so. I think so. I'll probably give it a try. Is it on High Dive? Where is it?
It's on
Amazon.
It's on Amazon.
Amazon. I keep can't remember all these streaming services. That is such a like non-problem. Oh, there's too many anime streaming services. I can't remember them all. It's so hard to be me. Okay, so I think that was everything I had on my list, plus one. Is there anything else that people want to bring up? Because I know there were more shows that did premiere this week. I covered most of them, but there are more. So did I miss anything?
Let me see. I will say there's no legal stream for it, so you'll have to search it out. But the Baby Penguin anime is freaking adorable.
How can Crunchyroll not get that? Like, the reason why I have been a paid Crunchyroll subscriber since 2010 is so they would license things like that. I mean, they're on thin ice with me, is what I'm saying. It's like, no, don't go make your independent American animations. Don't go upgrading your player and take away the ability to take screenshots. Just go license the friggin' fluffy penguin anime. I don't know. So at some point, I'll probably just go on this like giant rant against Crunchyroll, and I don't know. I'll get like banned from using their service. They'll be like, we don't even want your money anymore. You're too much trouble. All right. So I think we did a pretty solid, respectable job trying to cover the new anime season so far. I'm sure there's more stuff premiering next week. I don't know if we're going to be able to record next Sunday yet. Hopefully, we'll see. I mean, that is assuming you guys are available. I haven't even asked yet.
I will be.
Okay.
As far as I know, I will be.
Okay, and maybe even Sal will be. Maybe we can get the band back together. Maybe we can get all four of us. That'd be cool. All right, so thank you for joining us. I hope everybody's enjoying the fall season. If you haven't seen Goblin Slayer yet, maybe watch it with a fluffy plushie or something that's going to make you happy. Just putting that out there. Or, don't watch it. That's fine, too. And we'll see you again soon. So good night.
Good night.
Okay, I'm hitting stop broadcast.